Hello, and welcome to Self Talk. My name is Danko Sidorowski, the host of your show. To my right, I have Herb Martin, a life coach and psychotherapist. And as our guest today, we have Heather Benton. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Heather is an author of, along with her sister, Obliging Fairies of Love and Romance and the Obliging Fairies of Dream World.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Heather.
Well, I've been writing for about 8 years now, doing my own novels and freelancing for some publications. And my sister, being autistic, has been these that are among family and friends, sort of became a little bit famed. She basically wants to help people with any problem that could possibly arise. And we'd been looking for an outlet to get them to the world, basically, somehow. And so being a writer, I thought putting together some books and doing them in sort of a humorous picture book type of thing for grown-ups was a perfect outlet, and we've had some good reviews from them so far. So we are launching a series. We have 2 right now. We have another one coming out in September, and looking to go forward with a lot of them in the future.
Let me ask you, have you been writing your whole life?
In some ways,
Pretty
yes,
much.
yeah. Creative writing on my own, whether it was in classes or wanting to study it for a bit, and in some forms, yes.
So were these your first books, technically?
No, actually they were, I believe, my 7th and 8th book. I wrote a few novels. The first probably 2 I would consider my practice novels that may never see the light of day again, just because they were sort of figuring out the process. And then I wrote a few more novels, and during that time was sort of conceptualizing this idea of putting together something like this with my sister. And so we came up with the first one in 2012, and it's been I don't know, it's done pretty well. Very good reviews. People have seemed to find them very endearing.
What's like when I look at writing, if I were to write a book, I look at it and it looks like such a big thing to put your head around. What's something that was, like, what did you find the most challenging to be when putting this together?
With the fairy books, they actually comparatively, as opposed to a novel, they're much easier for me. A novel is a lot more complex. There's a lot of layers, and it's a much longer process. The biggest challenge with these was sort of just figuring out slowly. At first, the first book, it was meant to be just, we'll do one fairy book. It'll be sort of a standalone thing. And then we decided to do sort of themes going forward. The first one being the Obliging Fairies of Dream World. Courtney, my sister, refers to all of her fantasies, the fairies and all this, as her dream world, because she's a grown woman in her 30s with autism, and sort of has to live through these fantasies because she is not fully capable of doing things that everyone else is able to do. So the first one was sort of a compilation of some of our favorites, and then going forward we wanted to do themes, and that's been sort of a minor challenge, not much of one, but figuring out what's the next step, what's the next book we want to do.
What's interesting here is, like, I'll see how each of the fairies is titled, and so it's some of them seem to be pretty complex thoughts, like kick cancer's ass fairy, and other types of fairies here. How does she come up with those ideas in there?
This is, I'd like to ask you to explain the genesis of autism. So there are a lot of people that don't understand why this isn't magic. It's an occurrence that seldom do people function this way. And your sister and you have a very special thing.
Yeah.
And to see what people think about people who are that way, it'd be nice to talk about a little bit about what the differences made and the success of that and the peculiar relationship that you guys have and the kind of people you are to stick together and work together based on what people might think the symptomatology of autism is, and give them a better picture of what you.
What was it like growing up with a sister that was autistic?
Well, that was that. I mean, as you say, the sort of the stigma. It's changed a lot. We grew up, as children in the '80s, and that was sort of a time when autism was just beginning to be heard by people. I personally didn't know anyone else with any siblings with autism. I didn't know anyone else other than my sister with autism. And so I think it was a lot more confusing than it is today. It's obviously something that almost everyone's heard about. Everyone knows
it's been
somebody.
on the rise too, hasn't it?
I mean, it's become more of an epidemic, honestly. So growing up, it was normal to me because I knew it my entire life. I mean, from the time she's a couple of years older than me, and she was always that way, so it was normal. But my brother and myself sort of just had to navigate the waters with her. In school, she encountered a lot of bullying. I'm not sure how that is for children now, with autism being much more prevalent and Asperger's as well. But I remember one instance, my brother walking behind her in school, and kids would just come and scream in her face, and my brother shoving a kid against the locker and having to threaten him, you never do this again. So, and we both kind of had to look out for her. And it was challenging at home at times. She didn't know how to deal with her anger in some ways, and I find it almost sort of endearing because when she would get mad at me, she'd write me angry letters in crayon, even as like a later adolescent, and I'd get them slipped under my door. But she, we have a very, very close bond as sisters, though. So it's I don't know. It's a very.
It seems like almost like autism kind of carries this childlike behavior throughout the course of their life.
Absolutely.
But that might be interesting for you because it kind of brings you back to your.
Yeah.
The interesting part of it is the design that you managed it is based off love. And usually they like basically inanimate objects, and it's very difficult to communicate. But you two have a magic in that she expresses herself, and you express yourself to her, which winds up, she was able to function in such a way, but you encouraged that. Well, another sister would not have done that because it's a lot of issue when you have a sister that way. And then I'm giving you strokes to what a woman you have been with your work.
Thank you.
And your own expression and the way you looked at it. And in the future, there's a lot of things that you guys are really going to be doing together. And if you read the book, which is the magic in it, your pictures are very cogent in that they are like what is called in psych is I forgot the word to it, but it's like a picture, and it reflects the feelings of people, and the drawings do that very well, and so it's sort of like a picture of your feelings, and with each one there's a development in the relationship. So I think your book will really help a lot of people.
I want to ask this. So who is the target audience for these books? I mean, is it the autistic children, or is it people struggling in finding some...
More so adults. I mean, it's not adult books, but they're grown up, a little bit more grown up material. For the love and romance book, for example, I mean, it deals with, some of the fairies are funny, like, kind of laugh out loud, lift your day, but some of them are a little heavier topics. It touches a little on divorce, and like you said, the cancer, anti-cancer fairy, that happens to be, for some reason, something that Courtney has latched onto that she's very passionate about. She has I spread out all of these letters she received one day across my parents' table from cancer foundations that she's sent fairies to voluntarily, and I was like almost in tears because it's unbelievable that she just is constantly making these fairies and sending them out to, basically to fight cancer, to wish people well, and basically the vice president of the Prostate Cancer Foundation sort of summed it up. He received one of her fairies and blogged about it and said that when he got it, he was grinning ear to ear. Otherwise, he would have been crying because he was so touched by the fact that she has her own struggles, and she's her whole life been dealing with her own condition, but she's so the love thing, as you say, she wants to help other people so much, and she's constantly asking, I wonder how this fairy out there is doing. I wonder if this fairy is working, and it's genuine.
So the idea is that she'll draw a fairy, and that fairy is supposed to be this magical fairy that helps you with a certain situation, right?
Yes, exactly.
And then she'll send it out into the world and see if it can
work its magic.
Its magic, right?
Yeah.
So, and then what's really interesting about that is, those things are intangible, obviously, and then she actually goes back and thinks about how it's doing in wherever it is now, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, some of her magic, I know she really puts a lot of effort into putting her vibes in. It's like wants to have her love in that fairy when she's drawing them. And
what does she do to, when she's drawing it, how does she put that love in there?
Sometimes when I'm sitting there with her and she's doing them, she'll talk about it, and it just seems like that very focused, as she, kind of like in her dream world, when she's very focused on fantasizing about, I'm daydreaming about this or that. It's sort of when she's drawing, she kind of goes into that about her fairies. And there's actually been a couple cases of things she's given people fairies. We had one recently. One of the patients in my mom's office needed a kidney transplant. She made the lady a kidney transplant fairy and then made another one, and she had a kidney transplant within 2 weeks after that fairy. So
it works.
Possibly. Yeah. She puts a lot of magic into them. So
now, can we order a fairy? Sorry?
Anyway, that's the goal. Her goal was to get them out there in the magic. And
so if somebody's experiencing something, can they order up a fairy from her?
Yes, absolutely.
How do they do that?
You can go through my website, heatherbentonbooks.com.
Okay.
And her and I work together on it, and she's more than happy to custom make fairies for people.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So anything that anyone has having issues with or would like to maybe get some help with or get some magic, you can put it in through there.
And I'd like to just add on to the word I wanted to say was Rochard. Every picture depicts a station, like, and it's a picture, and that picture is drawn what
Right.
it fits the situation as she draws, and
Yeah, she does a great job.
but there's a thread that goes through it. It's built on love, and constantly.
Yep. They're
And
all.
she's giving a message.
All
to
right,
people.
so here's one. Find a lover with an accent fairy. Okay, so did she come up with that on her own, or was that you two being
I don't
sisters?
remember that. I think that was both of us together working on that. I mean, I know she had a part in that as well. She's very, very, very enraptured with the idea of romance and boyfriends and such. So a lot of the fairies in the Love and Romance book were ones we created specifically for that book. They were new fairies, and she was very excited to come up with some ideas for Love and Romance. The original book was sort of a compilation of fairies she had already done that were favorites from people that knew about her fairies. So yeah, she likes coming up with the ideas for a lot of them.
So doing that, what was the outcomes of these fairies in terms of what the message she sends to people?
In regards to the
Yeah,
whole
what's
book,
it like
or
to be in love?
oh,
To love, to be in love,
yeah.
and
It
she's
was-
exploring that.
Well, I'd like to know, like, what do you think that this could accomplish for somebody, an adult
That
or a teenager?
to me personally, I think that the Love and Romance book it's kind of for any adult, almost therapeutic. I wrote that one ironically while I was going through a divorce, so it became more well-rounded because it's not just first date fairy or fall in love fairy. There's that one touches on some heavier things because love and romance is sometimes very painful.
And it covers the gamut because it goes through to a divorce from a new lover fairy that we saw in here as well,
Yeah.
which is kind of interesting. So it goes from the beginning of a possible love relationship or an interest to the breakup. And there's even a breakup fairy in here and whatnot.
One of my favorites in there is the rising from the ashes fairy. So, there's always
Yeah, I
a
saw
new
that
hope.
one in there.
So-
That's the return.
So what
Yeah.
do you do? How do you prep yourself? What's your self-talk that happens when you start to write to one of these fairies? That's a big job.
For writing in general, for me, I sort of have to get in a quiet space or listen to music that gets me in kind of in the vibe of it. With the fairies in particular, it's hard to explain. I need to see the pictures, and then I kind of just pick something about that picture that, I guess like you'd say, like the Rorschach, that just stands out to me, whether it's something about the way they look or the feeling that I get when I think about, as you say, the breakup fairy or something, and that sort of decides whether or not it's going to be, it's cute in this way. Feels like a funny fairy. We'll write this one to be funny, or this one, no, this is heavy. This is something that people have dealt with, and it's a serious issue. It may only be one-page thing, but it's something that could touch people's hearts. So that one is more about, sort of therapeutically reading the fairies and picking up their vibe and
also
from
very therapeutic for you.
yes,
So
very.
when you're speaking of that trip up and down and in the future,
Yes.
what must love look like to you? You know,
Yeah.
and that struggle and that fear and all of everything in that picture
Yeah.
depicts that. So
I'm trying to picture how it was growing up because having a sibling that had autism, the parents probably had to be quite supportive of
absolutely.
you need, let's all work as a family. And then she must have seen so many good things happening at home in order to have this positive energy of all these different fairies and helping. Tell us a little bit about your home. How was that?
I mean, it was like any family. It definitely had its ups and downs. I think for my parents, and being a parent myself now, I can't even imagine the struggle of having 3 kids alone would be hard, but having an autistic child. And I remember hearing about when she was diagnosed with autism fairly young, and it was a new word. It was a new word to us. We didn't know what it meant. And I think that was very, very difficult for my parents to go through that, raising a child that with something that very few people at the time had or knew that they had. So, and I know my mom has told me, she has her own guilt feelings. I think probably all moms have feelings like that in some ways, whether it's warranted or not. But yeah, they've become very, very supportive of this, and they love the fairy books. They're constantly asking for more copies of them to hand them out. So I think they're very proud of her doing this and gaining a bit of an audience. Show other autistic people.
It's really nice
do
to
it.
see a sister relationship like this that has grown over time and has kept its innocence, I think. And then you guys have created a path for helping others and also helping yourselves kind of express these things through these fairies, which is really cool. And they're all different types of fairies that could help. I think that could be distributed so many different ways and whatnot. So where are you going next with? Are you working on something now that?
Yes, we have actually quite a few in store for the coming year. We've been talking a little bit with the Ted Lindsay Foundation, of course, which works with autism in the Detroit area, to team up with them in some ways to get these fairies out there. And the goal for us is to have about 5 of these, because these are actually, compared to novels, easy for me to publish these very quickly. So we'd like to have 5 within the next year released. The very next one is going to be on travel and adventure, just a little bit more fun, but again, there's a kind of the theme with that one I think is about living life, really. Not so much being afraid of things, but going out and living life. And then I will have one on parenting, which is, I think, for parents will be, should have some good laughs in there. So, and there's a few more down the road, but those are the next 2 we'd like to come out with by the end of the year.
So what's still very interesting to me is your current relationship with Courtney and how you guys grew up and the self-talk that you think she might have had and the self-talk you were having during and throughout this time. So can you maybe just go a little deeper into some of the self-talk that you think she may have while she's doing this, and then maybe some of the self-talk that you're having while you're doing this?
Yeah, I know for Courtney, something she has talked about a lot is she's struggled a lot in, I would say, the past probably 5 to 7 years with being autistic. She knew that she was autistic the majority of her life. She was taken to a naturopathic doctor, and they gave her some supplements, and it kind of helped her come out of her shell a little bit. In some ways we saw some improvement, but of course she's still very, she's autistic and is very limited in some ways. But during that time she had sort of the realization, I don't want to be autistic. I'm autistic and I want these things that other people can have. But she struggled a lot with not being able to have them. And then so doing these books has been very exciting for her. She's
How did she struggle? How did she, what do you mean by when she struggled?
just frustration and crying about wishing that she wasn't, and that she wants things that other people in life can have.
That she sees around her.
Yeah, I mean, she has the same life dreams that everybody else grows up having. The idea of, living on your own, possibly having a boyfriend, things like that. And to know that, to reach that sort of fine line where you know that you can't really have all those things in some ways, but to know that you can't have them. I think there was sort of, before that, there was the ignorance is bliss, sort of not knowing that she was, it was a painful time, I think, for her to realize that. But now, actually, with doing the books, she's embraced it a lot more. And she's told me that she sees that her autism is a good thing, and this, this is a way to show other autistic people that you can do something more than just, be at home.
In your writing about it, and we go back to the love thing. Does that scare you a little bit about your tomorrow?
I'm always a little scared about my tomorrow. I mean, I think maybe we all are in some way, but I do my best not to be. I think having a child definitely strikes some fear in your heart after because there's so much more responsibility there, and being a role model and making sure they're taken care of. That, I think, is, that's changed how I look at my writing a lot. It's made it more of it was always a passion. Yeah,
sort of like,
it's always been a passion. I've wanted to do this as a full-time living, but it's morphed it a little bit.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on our show. The time's gone away quickly, and look out for the new Obliging Fairies series, folks, and thank you again for being on our show.
Yeah,
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
having
watching
me.
Self Talk.
Thank you.